I have been travelling Australia for 4.5 years in my Toyota HiAce commuter van called Gypsy, and I have loved this van. I still love this van. I think Toyota HiAces are awesome for van life. So why am I selling her? When I originally bought the van, it actually didn't have a roof extension on it. I bought it from a gentleman down in Margaret River, and he'd done a bit of a fit out in the back because he wanted to go camping with his wife, but she wasn't that keen, so lucky for me. So I bought it with a little bit of a fit out done in the back, but ever since I've had her, I've pretty much been renovating her because as I've started, been living van life, I was a bit of a newbie to it at the time, and I just wasn't sure what was going to work for me and what wouldn't. And my van life experience has also changed over the years too. I used to do a lot more stealth camping, whereas now I do a lot more off-grid camping in national parks. So over those years it's changed, but for the first 3 years it was literally just my head sort of, I'm that little bit too tall. I'd ripped out the head lining, but my head was still kind of touching the roof. And look, I live full-time in my van. I have a remote finance job, so I work full-time in my van. I run an art business from here. I run my YouTube channel from here. So I do actually spend a lot of time in the van. So it got to the point in January last year, I had to sort of make that choice on whether I upgrade to a bigger van or whether I renovate Gypsy. Now, there were a few reasons why I chose to renovate rather than drop a whole bunch of money on a new fancy van. And the first one was basically I'm emotionally tied to this van. So Gypsy and I have been through so much together. We've travelled so much of Australia together. I have put in a lot of blood, sweat and tears into renovating her and making her my home. And so this has been my home, and my daughter actually pointed out to me that this has been the longest home I've ever been in. I actually used to move house so often that, this has been my most stable home in my adult life. I'm going to start getting emotional now. And so, yes, emotionally tied to the van. Second reason was that I love this size of this van. So it's been really good for me as a single person living in this van because I can still park her in, normal parking bays, pretty easy to drive around. Toyotas are cheap to run, they're cheap to fix, and I just love Toyota as a car brand. I find them so reliable. And look, I have really looked after this van. I've had a service twice a year. I've always had the tyres, replaced and aligned, and especially when I'm crossing the Nullarbor, I'll always get all those checks done before I take off on a big trip. So for all those reasons, I decided at the time to renovate and extend the roof. And for those of you that have been following me for a while, it was the wrong choice because the roof has leaked ever since I had it installed. And look, I don't want to go into that whole situation except to say that it's been extremely stressful last 12 or 18 months for me, and winter is fast approaching and I just cannot deal with that again. So I have reached another turning point at which I've had to decide again that I really need to upgrade the van. So anyway, I'm going to take you through all the amazing things about the Toyota HiAce. We're going to talk about why I sort of chose to, keep her for so long, what works, what doesn't work, and maybe let's get into the emotional and look at some of the last few years that we've spent together in her, really, if you've been following me for this long. And so you're probably going to get emotional too, sorry. All right, well, let's talk about the pros and cons of what I've found living in this Toyota HiAce for over 4 years. We'll start from the front of the vehicle, work our way through to the back, which means we start with the engine. Now, I want to preface this by saying that I am not a mechanic. I don't know very much about mechanics at all, but I have had to learn over the years. So my mechanic has always told me Toyotas are the best. They're just the most reliable. As I've mentioned earlier, they're cheap to run, they're cheap to replace parts. The tyres on them, even though they're like a bigger vehicle, the tyres on them aren't that big, so they don't cost a lot to replace the tyres. And worst case scenario, replacing that tyre is something I could do on my own. I did go through it with a friend, so it's not a four-wheel drive, it's not all-wheel drive tyres, they're just normal tyres. So it is something that I could manage myself. I have bought myself an extended pipe to try and lever off, I don't know what the tool is that undoes the nuts, I'm sorry. But I bought a pipe that I can put on on that tool so that I can loosen those nuts myself. But I also grew up in an era where we were taught how to, you know, top up our oil and top up our coolant and windscreen wiper fluid and things like that. So the engines on these vehicles don't scare me. They're familiar to me. Whereas I look at some of the new engines and I'm like, oh gosh. I have been able to jump start this vehicle. I've needed to do that a few times, mainly because I've left my lights on. So I can do that with jumper leads, and I also have a portable charger as well from iTech World. So if that's something that you want to keep on hand, there is a link in the description of this video. So anything you buy through those links in my video descriptions does give me a commission of sales, so it helps support the channel. Thank you. So I can't really say too much about engines except to say that this thing has never missed a beat. So that's it about engines. Now when it comes to driving the vehicle, I haven't really driven any other vans, so I can't compare it to anything yet. So some of the things I have missed are cruise control. That's been a bit of a bugger for me not having that in this van. I don't know if other Toyota HiAces of this year have that, but yeah, this one doesn't, which is a bit of a bummer. This one is an automatic, so that's been fine. I do find that it's a little bit noisy when you're driving it because the engine is under the front seats. It's not out the front of the vehicle. And I do wonder, I think maybe the latest Toyota HiAces, the engine is out the front because it does look a little bit more like there's more out the front of that vehicle. I could be wrong though. And someone said that to me. They were worried about the noise in the cab when I earlier on in van life, and I sort of thought, oh, it wasn't something I'd noticed, but then I hadn't driven any other vans, so I didn't really have anything to compare it to. But over the years, it is something that I've noticed, and mainly because of YouTube. Because if I try and film while I'm driving, the noise of the vehicle is quite loud, so I have to speak louder on the video. The actual space of the front cab is okay. It's reasonably roomy enough for me. The seats are okay. They're not, you know, I don't find them uncomfortable. Other people have found them uncomfortable. You know, they're not anything fancy, but you know, my butt probably gets sore after 3 or 4 hours of driving though. When it comes to living inside the cab here at the back, the one thing that really bugs me about the HiAces is the way that they curve in at the top. I don't know why they do it. It's just a thing. And I think the newer ones, they seem to not be doing that as much. They seem to be a bit more square, but those square vans they look nicer. They would be easier to do interior cladding on. And I have to admit, like when I sit in this seat here, if I sit here, my head is touching that bit that starts to turn up. It's just annoying. So I really found that to be a bit of a bugger. What I do love though are the windows, and it probably would be better for privacy to have tinted windows, but to be able to pull up here and just have all of that window space, and it's like it's bringing the outdoors in. It would be great if the windows were higher because I'm sitting here, so I would like to be able to see, you know, up a little bit higher. So it's a bit of a bummer that they're so low, but I do like that there's so many of them. But in saying that, it's not great for insulation, so that's something to consider. I do have insulation in my window covers, which does help, but yeah, it's never going to be as good as like a fully insulated van. Now, because the van wasn't registered as a camper when I bought it, I had to go through that process and register it as a camper, and I did all that when I had the roof pod put on, because I had to get all that approved as well. So going through that process meant that I had to take it to the weigh bridge, get it weighed, and go through that whole process. Now, the actual weight, and I'm going back on memory here, I think that it weighed 1.9 tonne before all the renovations. Like that's what the tear was on it as a normal Toyota HiAce Commuter. And when I wound up going through everything and I got it weighed, it's now registered as 2.8 tonne. So that's the weight of it. Some of the bigger vehicles are obviously going to weigh a lot more. And when you go through that process, you need to do things like make sure that your fuel tank is reasonably empty, your water tanks are pretty empty, take out as much as you can. Those drawers that I've installed, those Titan drawers as my bed base, they are really heavy. So I actually took out not only the clothing from inside, but also the drawers themselves, because they add a lot of weight. So handy tip for you. So yeah, I think if you were to have a bigger van, it would be a bigger, more weight. Yeah. Now when it comes to my back door, it does open up that way, whereas like a lot of the other vans will have two doors that open out this way. Now the advantage to having this kind of door is that when you open it up, you've got a little bit more shade at the back of your van. And I have actually seen where you can buy, it's almost like a tent cover for your back door, so you could create another room on the back of your van. I haven't done that, have never needed to, but it's an option. The bummer about that kind of back door is that here in Western Australia, when that sea breeze comes in and I'm parked on the ocean, it comes in from the south, and so I have to close that back door because it just blows all sand and stuff in. But if I was to have those doors that open like this, I could actually potentially block some of that wind and still leave the door open. So, but mind you, I haven't had a van with those doors, so I could be wrong, but anyway. Now this door here is really heavy. So it's relying on two gas struts to keep it up. And when I was coming back last time across the Nullarbor, one of those gas struts went. It lost its gas. I don't know. Anyway, they're very expensive to replace through Toyota. So I wound up going online and getting some unbranded ones, and I fitted them myself, and I think it was like $150 to replace them. Now someone else did say that you can actually re-gas them. I don't know how much longer they would last with that. I don't have that experience, but I wound up replacing it. But I found that once those gas struts went, it was so hard to open that door. It was really heavy, and so it was a little bit scary replacing the gas struts. I had to prop a ladder underneath to keep it up when I was doing it. So yeah, that's my comments on the back door. The width of the Toyota HiAce is a little bit of a problem too, because it's I think the width of my bed is 171 centimetres. So I'm about 170 centimetres. So I can just fit sleeping that way across the bed, and for me that's an important thing, because it means I've got a desk space, because I need that desk space. So if I was to have a bed that went this way, it would just take up way too much room for me. I wouldn't be able to live in here properly. So it was really important that I be able to do that. Now my feet obviously do just kind of touch the end, because the van goes up like that. So that's been a bit of a bugger, and I think that I'm really not sure about a lot of other vans, but you might just want to check, if you can actually sleep that way. I know some people will do you can cut a hole in the side of the van there and put like an extension pod on there. So you can do that on either side of the van, which would give you a bit more room to sleep that way, and therefore creating more room in here. I think though, when you do that, that extension pod can't reach out a certain distance out from where the wheel arch is, so you might have to also extend your wheel arch. I don't know, that's what someone else told me, so there might be some rules around that you might want to think about. So as I've grown into van life over the years, and my YouTube channel has grown and my art business has grown, I have found space to become a bit of an issue inside the van for me, and it's not going to be the same for everybody, but especially my art business. I decided last year that I would start printing my own prints, which meant that I had to find storage for this massive printer. I also had to find storage for all the envelopes to post the prints out. And to be really honest, that business model hasn't actually worked for me that well, so for many, many reasons. So I may change that again soon, watch this space. But also things like power storage and water storage, because I am actually going more off grid now and sitting still. So I want to be able to store more power and store more water. Now, I have found out that you can actually store water underneath the vehicle, so I could actually do that in this van, and I could just put that water tank underneath the vehicle, but there's also the issue of power storage. So I run a lot, I use electrical a lot because that's just what I prefer. So, and I cook like 3 meals a day. So, and I've got a fixed solar panel. I don't have flexi panels, and there's all these different things I could do in this van to fix that. But it's just sort of got to the point where I really want to be able to store a lot more power. So I currently have a 200 amp hour battery, which is, you know, reasonably big, but if I wanted to store more power, I would have to get another one of those, and I don't have the room for that. So yeah, I think electrical does take up a fair bit of space in the van when you've got a big system set up. So, and look, if I was to get a portable power system, I've still got to find somewhere for that too. So, you know, and plus when you cook with electrical, you've got all your electrical appliances as well. So I've bought more of those over the years too. So storage is just becoming a bit of an issue for me. And I have had another follower reach out to me on storage and how I fit everything in here, and it's a nightmare. I don't know if I'll get around to doing a storage video in this van. But yeah, it's become an issue for me, you know, to get access to things. I'm having to move things around all the time to get what I need, and I'm just getting really frustrated with it. So storage has become a bit of a problem for me. And when it comes to the exterior of the vehicle, now with the Toyota HiAces, they're kind of renowned for the top of the vehicle getting rust on it. So I did actually have a vehicle spray painter tell me that these vehicles are renowned for having a very thin layer of paint on their roof. And you'll notice with a lot of these vehicles that it starts kind of above the windscreen is where you'll start to see a little bit of rust. And prior to getting the roof extension done on this vehicle, I actually got up there and my painter let me down last minute, and so I had to do all the prep work, which I kind of wanted to do anyway because I wanted to make sure that all the rust was gone. So I got up there and I ground out all the rust and I prepped it all and everything, and then he wound up doing like 3 layers of paint on the roof. So yeah, just keep that in mind if you do buy a HiAce. I don't know if that's the case with the newer Toyota HiAces, but with this sort of year model, they're quite renowned, especially if you're parking up, you know, on the water a lot too. So maybe you just might apply another layer of paint before any rust starts to show. And I have found since I put the roof extension on that it's a little bit more difficult to stealth camp now. You know, I think I talked myself into saying, oh, it looks like a workman's roof rack or something, but no, people know that you're a camper. So I found it a lot easier to stealth camp when it was just a van with no roof extension. So I think that's probably a plus side to having a one-piece van as well. Yeah. Okay, well, it's time to get the tissues out. Let's talk through my van life journey with Gypsy since I moved into her 4.5 years ago. When I started van life, and look, some of you know my story, so I apologise for repeating anything. I had tried van life for a couple of months in Canada in 2018 with my partner at the time, and I just fell in love with it. It's, as some of you who've done it know, it's just like this really freeing experience, just to be able to pack up and go whenever you want. And when I came back to Australia, it was really hard for me to get back into a normal life. And I left Perth and I moved down south to Dunsborough because I loved it down there. I'd lived there before and I just felt really close to nature there. And one night I kind of just decided, you know, it had been playing on my mind to try and give it another go in Australia this time. And that night I kind of snapped and I went, right, and I went online, and straight away I found Gypsy, and she was in Margaret River, which was only half an hour away from me. And within the week I'd been to test drive her and bought her home. And within the next, I think it was about 6 weeks, I had got someone to do the electrical fit out, sold everything, pretty much everything I owned, like no furniture. I kept like personal belongings, clothing, you know, things like that. I think I've still got a suitcase full of photos and, you know, a couple of items at Mum's and my daughter's, but pretty much everything gone. I didn't have any problem doing it. It all felt so right to me at the time. And I've just never looked back. And, you know, the first night I spent in her was out the front of my daughter's house. And it was a little bit nerve-wracking, like you feel a bit weird sleeping in a van because it's not the normal thing to do. So it was an adjustment, but it just still felt so good. And my daughter actually came with me up north, and we took a trip up to Karajini, and we visited my best friend who was living in Commuter at the time. It was just so good, so freeing to be on the road. And I spent about the first 18 months of van life in WA, mainly sort of going between down south and up to Commuter to visit my friend. And it took a long time for me to have the guts to travel across the Nullarbor. And also, sorry, like there were just the amount of fit out things I did. So, you know, I did a lot of the fit out and myself, and things that I thought would work that didn't. And, you know, like when I say that I put a lot of blood, sweat and tears into it, it was literally like all of that, you know, just constantly cutting myself. And yeah, anyway, so there's like, I don't know, for me there's been this bond of just with the vehicle, because it's part of who I am. You know, I've put so much into her that it's been this evolution of Christy as well, because, you know, I went from corporate Christy to van life Christy. So there's been this evolution of me turning into my true gypsy hippie self as well. And some of you may have seen that throughout the van as the years have gone on, you know, and I sort of add little bits and pieces to her. Yeah, and so then, you know, we crossed the Nullarbor for the first time, and something that I thought would be so scary was completely fine. Like, you know, I had no problem at all. Yeah, there were so many people on the roads, and I actually found it easier to drive across the Nullarbor than I did driving up north in WA, because it is just one long straight road. There's obviously a lot of road trains and trucks, but they're a lot easier to overtake because you can see, you know, you don't have hills and turns, so you've only got a certain period of time in which you can overtake. You can pretty much see, you know, a fair long distance in front of you. And I actually hadn't explored a lot of the East Coast at all before I started van life. Like, I think I may have been to Queensland once. I did live in Victoria when I was younger for a couple of years, but I was very young, so I don't remember a lot of it. New South Wales hadn't explored a lot, and look, to be honest, I still haven't done a lot of New South Wales. So, you know, she's not only been with me through this journey of exploring Australia and falling in love so much more with Australia, but she's also seen me through an emotional time in my life, you know, because when you let go of a previous version of yourself and you return to who you really are, it's a difficult journey. So Gypsy has been my one constant through a really big change in my life. She's been my safe space. And when you live on the road, it's a lot of instability, you know, like I love it, don't get me wrong, but it's this sense of sometimes where, you know, you're trying to work out where you belong in the world. And so when you've got somewhere like this to come back to, it's a sense of belonging, you know. It's a space that I've created that makes me feel safe. It makes me feel like I belong somewhere. Oh, this is harder than I thought it would be to film this. So there's a lot of memories in this van for me. You know, there's all the work I put into her. You know, I can picture myself sitting on the roof, grinding out the rust, pulling the old solar panels off, changing my gas struts on the back door, jump starting the vehicle, just renovating the inside, you know, hand sawing all the wood, which I'm sure was very painful for all of you to watch that. you know, doing the interior of the roof pod when I had that installed, and putting the map on the roof, and yeah, there's a lot of memories in here, which are for me. I was going to say for me and me only, but it's for me and you, because a lot of you will watch this journey. So it's now time for a new adventure. I will leave you now with footage of me and Gypsy over the last couple of years. So get your tissue boxes ready, and I look forward to sharing this new adventure with you. Many happy travels.
You've got forever in your eyes, and I've got so much on my mind. I didn't want to waste, I didn't want to waste your time. And you've got a heart made of gold. Someday somebody's gonna hold those hands on mine. And I'm only trying to save you in the end. Just praying that I didn't lose a friend. I hope you sang all the letters that I wrote. Take me away with the stories that we told, somewhere in a box in the back of your closet. I hope you spin all the records that we play. Don't let these scars make the music fade. Please don't throw me away. You've got a right to be upset. You gave me everything you had, and I tried so hard to love you like that. And I'm only trying to save you in the end. Just praying that I didn't lose a friend. I hope you save all the letters that I wrote. Take me away with the stories that we told, somewhere in a box in the back of your closet. Now we spin all the records that we play. Don't let these scars make the music fade. Please don't throw me away. 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 You've got forever in your eyes, and I've got so much on my mind. Didn't wanna waste your time. And I hope you say all the letters that I wrote. Tuck me away with the stories that we told,